Drop the knife, Sienna, or are you planning to tickle me with it? His voice is a low rumble against my ear, vibrating straight through my spine and settling somewhere deep in my belly. I freeze. My wrist is currently pinned to the mahogany desk by a hand the size of a dinner plate, and my lethal, silver-tipped dagger is looking pitifully small next to the Lycan King's massive bicep. I wasn't going to tickle you, I hiss, trying to sound dangerous, despite the fact that my feet are dangling 3 inches off the floor. I was aiming for your kidney. My kidney is 4 inches to the left, little wolf. You were aiming for my spleen. Sloppy. Draven shifts, his body pressing flush against mine. He's scorching hot, a wall of muscle and arrogance smelling of rain, dark chocolate, and, unfortunately, for my traitorous hormones, pure. Unadulterated male. His nose grazes the sensitive spot behind my ear, inhaling deeply, and I swear I feel him smirk against my skin. Tell me, he whispers, his lips ghosting over my pulse. Did you really think you could sneak up on an apex predator in his own bedroom? Or did you just want an excuse to get my hands on you? My breath hitches. God help me, he's not going to kill me. He's playing with me. And the terrifying part isn't that I failed. It's that I really, really don't want him to let go. Welcome back to Storm's Werewolf Romance Library, my loves. If that tension didn't make your heart skip a beat, you might need to check your pulse. We are diving deep into the Lycan's den today, and trust me, the heat is only just beginning. Before we let Draven have his way with the story, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button if you love a possessive alpha who knows exactly what he wants. And if you're new here, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a chapter of The Spice. I want to know where my wolf pack is listening from today. Are you tuning in from the gym, your car, or are you hiding in the break room at work, hoping no one sees you blushing? Let me know in the comments below. And hey, if you want to support the channel and get early access to these episodes, plus some exclusive steamy bonus scenes that are too hot for the main feed, consider joining our channel membership. Now take a deep breath, grab a cold drink. You're going to need it. Let's get back to the story. Chapter 1. The Monster in the Velvet Suit. And my hands were trembling so violently that I had to clasp them together in front of my stomach, praying the layers of silk and lace would hide my terror. The great hall of the Lycan Citadel was colder than the frozen wastes outside. A cavernous expanse of gray stone and stained glass that smelled of ancient fires and fresh fear. Around me, the most powerful alphas on the continent, men who ruled their own territories with iron fists and brutal violence, stood with their heads bowed, looking at the floor like scolded puppies. It was pathetic, really. My father, Alpha Kalen of the River Pack, was shivering so hard his metals clinked together, a soft rhythmic sound that grated on my nerves. He had sold me to this place, traded my life for a peace treaty and a trade route, yet he was the one looking as if he were about to be executed. I, on the other hand, was merely looking at the man I was going to kill. High above us, on a dais carved from the living rock of the mountain, sat the nightmare himself, King Draven. They said he was a monster, a creature of shadow and blood, who had wiped out entire rebel packs in a single night. I had expected a beast, something scarred and gnarled. I hadn't expected him to be beautiful. He lounged on his throne with a deceptive laziness, one long leg stretched out, his chin resting on a fist. He was massive, easily a head taller than any man in the room, with shoulders that strained the seams of his charcoal suit. His hair was thick and dark, falling over his forehead in a way that made my fingers itch to push it back, and his jaw was sharp enough to cut glass. But it was his silence that terrified me. In a room full of nervous shuffling and whispered prayers, he was perfectly, terrifyingly still. My father nudged me hard in the ribs, his elbow digging into my corset. "Lower your eyes, Sienna," he hissed, the scent of his anxiety sour and pungent in the air. Do you want to get us killed before the negotiations even start? He considers eye contact a challenge. I'm just looking at my future husband, I whispered back, keeping my voice low but my chin high. If I'm going to share a bed with the monster, I should at least know which side is his good side. It was bravado, of course, a fragile shield to keep me from screaming. Beneath the heavy skirt of my gown, strapped securely to my upper thigh, was a slender vial of liquid silver and a dagger. I wasn't here to be a bride. I was here to be a widow. Suddenly, Draven moved. Then the motion was fluid and predatory, like a great cat uncoiling from a nap. He stood, and the air in the room seemed to vanish. He descended the stairs of the dais, his heavy boots making no sound on the stone. He ignored the bowing alphas. He ignored the trembling scribes holding the treaty scrolls. He walked straight toward me. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, terrified of accidentally brushing against him. As he got closer, his scent hit me. A heavy, intoxicating wave of rain, dark chocolate, and something uniquely electric, like the air before a thunderstorm. It made my head spin. It made my heart hammer a frantic rhythm against my ribs. He stopped directly in front of me, invading my personal space with the arrogance of a king who owned everything he saw. He was so large, he blocked out the light from the chandeliers, encasting me in his shadow. I refused to look down. I forced myself to meet his gaze, expecting to see cruelty in those midnight blue eyes. Instead, I saw curiosity and hunger. His pupils blew wide, swallowing the blue, until his eyes were almost entirely black. He tilted his head, inhaling deeply, his nostrils flaring as he took in my scent. "You!" he rumbled. His voice was a physical sensation, vibrating through the floorboards and straight up my legs. "You are not afraid." "I am terrified," I corrected him, my voice barely a whisper. But my mother raised me to look a wolf in the eye before he bites. Draven's lips quirked upward in a ghost of a smile. "Is that so?" He reached out, his hand large enough to crush my skull. I flinched, my hand twitching toward my thigh, but he didn't strike. His knuckles grazed my cheek, a touch so gentle it was shocking. The contact sent a jolt of lightning through my veins, a searing heat that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with biology. My breath hitched. His hand froze against my skin. A low, vibrating growl started deep in his chest, a sound that made every wolf in the room drop to their knees in submission. "Mine," he growled. The word wasn't a question. It was a decree. It echoed off the stone walls, shattering my plans, my mission, and my entire world in a single heartbeat. Chapter 2. I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me. Before I could process the fact that the Lycan King had just publicly claimed me, the floor vanished from beneath my feet. Draven scooped me up into his arms as if I weighed nothing more than a feather pillow, cradling me against his chest. I yelped, and instinctively wrapping my arms around his neck to keep from falling. His body was hard as stone, radiating a heat that seeped through the layers of my gown and warmed skin that had been cold for years. The hall erupted into chaos, shouts, gasps, my father stammering excuses, but Draven ignored them all. He turned on his heel and strode out of the great hall, carrying me deeper into the citadel. "Put me down," I hissed, kicking my legs uselessly. "You can't just carry people off. There are protocols. There are treaties to sign." "I am the king," Draven replied calmly, not even slightly winded by the stairs he was currently climbing. "I am the protocol." He kicked open a set of massive double doors and carried me into a room that was larger than my father's entire house. It was a masterpiece of masculine luxury, furs covering the stone floor, and a fireplace big enough to roast a whole ox, and a bed that looked like a cloud made of silk and sin. He walked over to the mattress and deposited me in the center of it, then took a step back, crossing his massive arms over his chest. I scrambled backward until my back hit the headboard, my heart racing. "What are you doing?" I demanded, my hand drifting toward the fruit bowl on the nightstand. I grabbed a small silver knife used for peeling apples. It was pathetic, but it was better than nothing. Stay back. Draven looked at the knife, then at me. One of his eyebrows arched upward. Sienna, he said, his voice laced with amusement. That is a cheese knife. Unless you plan to assault me with a particularly aggressive wheel of brie, I suggest you put it down. It's sharp enough, I bluffed, though the tip was rounded and about as threatening as a spoon. You are adorable, he murmured, stepping closer. I brandished the cheese knife. He didn't even flinch. He reached out and plucked it from my fingers with insulting ease, tossing it onto a nearby chair. If you want to hurt me, little wolf, you will have to do better than cutlery. Now stay. He turned and walked toward the fireplace, shrugging off his suit jacket. I am not a dog, I snapped. Do not tell me to stay. I am telling you to stay, because if you leave this room, my guards will assume you are escaping, and they will tackle you, he said, unbuttoning his cuffs, and I would dislike having to kill my own guards for touching what belongs to me. He pulled his dress shirt over his head, and my mouth went dry. I had seen alphas before. I had seen warriors. But I had never seen anything like him. His torso was a landscape of muscle and scars, a testament to centuries of violence. But it was the tattoo over his heart that caught my attention. A swirling, intricate mark of a wolf howling at a moon, etched in ink that seemed to shimmer in the firelight. The Lycan mark. It marked him as royalty, as something other. He tossed the shirt aside and turned to look at me, catching my stare. Like what you see? He asked, his voice dropping to a low, smoky purr. I was looking at your scars, I lied, my face heating up. Counting the times you failed to dodge. Draven laughed. It was a rich, deep sound that did strange things to my insides. Get some sleep, Sienna. The mating fever will start soon. You will need your strength. He walked around to the other side of the bed I was currently sitting on, and climbed in. I froze. You expect me to sleep here? With you? It is my bed, he pointed out, closing his eyes and settling into the pillows. And you are my mate. Where else would you sleep? The rug? It is bear fur, quite comfortable, but I prefer the sheets. I will not sleep with you, I declared, clutching the duvet to my chin. Fine, then sit there and watch me sleep. It is all the same to me. He breathed out a long sigh, his body relaxing instantly. But if you try to stab me with the cheese knife again, I will tickle you until you beg for mercy. Good night, little wolf. I sat there for an hour, watching the rise and fall of his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. He was infuriating. And he was terrifying. And he was currently taking up 3/4 of the bed. Finally, exhaustion won. I curled up on the very edge of the mattress, as far away from him as possible without falling off, and closed my eyes. I told myself I was keeping watch. I told myself I was waiting for a weakness. But as sleep pulled me under, the only thing I was aware of was the scent of rain and chocolate, wrapping around me like a blanket. Chapter 3. The Scent of Danger. I woke up to the sensation of being held. For a terrifying, groggy moment, I thought I was back home, and the weight across my waist was just a heavy blanket. Then I inhaled, and the rich, masculine scent of pine and rain flooded my senses, snapping my eyes open. I wasn't under a blanket. I was pinned to a mattress by an arm the size of a tree trunk. My back pressed flush against a wall of solid, scorching heat. Draven. I tried to wiggle free, but his grip tightened reflexively. He murmured something unintelligible in his sleep, burying his face in the crook of my neck. His nose brushed against the sensitive skin there, and a shiver violently racked my body. It wasn't just fear. It was that treacherous biological pull again. My inner wolf, a creature who had been dormant and depressed for years, was currently wagging her tail and purring like a traitor. Stop wiggling, Draven mumbled. his voice rough with sleep. "You feel like a bag of angry cats." "Let me go," I whispered, trying to pry his fingers off my hip. I need the bathroom." He grunted, reluctantly loosening his hold. I scrambled out of bed, my heart hammering. The morning light was streaming through the massive windows, illuminating the room in gold. Draven sat up, stretching his arms over his head. The sheet pooled at his waist, leaving his magnificent chest on full display. I forced myself to look away, marching towards the ensuite bathroom. "Do not lock the door," he called out lazily. "I do not trust you not to drown yourself in the tub to escape me." I slammed the door and locked it immediately. I stared at myself in the mirror. My hair was a bird's nest, my eyes were wide and frantic, and my cheeks were flushed a traitorous pink. "Get it together, Sienna," I whispered to my reflection. "He is the enemy. You are an assassin. Stop blushing at his abs." When I emerged 20 minutes later, scrubbed clean and wearing one of the silk robes I had found in the wardrobe, Draven was waiting for me. And he was fully dressed now, back in his intimidating black tactical gear. But his eyes were soft as they tracked me across the room. "Come here," he said, gesturing to the vanity stool. "Why?" I asked suspiciously. "Because your hair is wet and you cannot reach the back." "Sit." I sat, mostly because I suspected he would just pick me up and put me there if I refused. Draven picked up a towel and began to dry my hair. The intimacy of it was shocking. His hands, which could tear a man apart, were incredibly gentle as he massaged my scalp. He worked in silence, methodical and careful. It was a grooming ritual, I realized. Wolves groomed their packmates to show dominance and care. He was claiming me without saying a word. "You are tense," he noted, his fingers brushing against the nape of my neck. "I am a hostage," I reminded him. "Your tension is part of the job description." Draven chuckled. "You are not a hostage, Sienna. You are a queen. You just haven't realized it yet." He set the towel down and picked up a brush. As he moved, his hand brushed against my thigh, specifically the upper thigh where I had strapped the holster beneath my nightgown the night before. I froze. I hadn't been wearing the holster in bed, but I had put it back on immediately after my shower. It was hidden under the robe, but his knuckles grazed the distinct outline of the leather strap. The motion of the brush stopped. Silence stretched out between us, thick and suffocating. My heart slammed against my ribs. He knew. He had to know. I waited for the explosion. I waited for him to grab me by the throat and demand to know why I was armed. Instead, Draven leaned down, his lips brushing the shell of my ear. "If you wanted to kill me, little wolf," he whispered, his voice dark and amused, "you should have done it last night while I was purring against your neck. You had the perfect opportunity." He pulled back, meeting my terrified gaze in the mirror with a wicked smirk. "But you didn't, which tells me that perhaps you like the way I purr more than you want me dead." Chapter 4. Operation Seduction failed. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. In my case, the definition of insanity was trying to stab a Lycan King who had reflexes faster than a striking viper and apparently found my assassination attempts adorable. The direct approach was failing miserably. I needed a new strategy, one that didn't involve cheese knives or hidden daggers that he could spot through 3 layers of silk. I needed to get close to him, close enough that his guard was down, close enough that the liquid silver in my pocket could actually find its way into his drink without him noticing. I needed to seduce him. It sounded like a solid plan in my head. I rummaged through the wardrobe Draven had provided, which was suspiciously stocked with my exact size, and pulled out a gown that was less of a dress and more of a suggestion. It was a deep, scandalous crimson that clung to every curve like a second skin, with a slit that went dangerously high up my thigh and a neckline that plunged deep enough to make a nun blush. I stared at myself in the mirror, applying a layer of rouge to my lips. You are a femme fatale, I whispered to my reflection, trying to summon the confidence of a woman who knew what she was doing. You are a siren. You are deadly. My reflection looked back at me skeptically, but I ignored her. Dinner was served in his private quarters, a spread of roasted meats and exotic fruits laid out on a low table in front of the fire. Draven was already there, pouring 2 glasses of dark wine. He had discarded his jacket, his white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, to reveal the hollow of his throat. When I walked in, I made sure to add a little sway to my hips, the kind of walk I'd seen highborn ladies use to trap wealthy husbands. Draven looked up. His hand paused mid-pour, the wine threatening to spill over the rim of the goblet. His eyes darkened, sweeping over me from the top of my head to the tips of my toes, lingering heavily on the exposed skin of my leg. "Good evening," I purred. Or at least I tried to purr. It came out a little breathless, probably because the corset was trying to rearrange my internal organs. I walked toward him, intent on draping myself elegantly across the chaise lounge opposite him. I didn't account for the thick bear fur rug. The heel of my shoe caught in the deep pile, and my elegant stride turned into a flailing stumble. I pitched forward with a very unsiren-like squeak, bracing myself for a faceplant into a platter of roast duck. I never hit the floor. Before gravity could claim me, strong hands snatched me out of the air. Draven had moved so fast he was a blur, catching me by the waist and pulling me upright against his chest. The impact knocked the wind out of me, but not as much as the heat radiating off him. We were chest to chest. My hands splayed against his hard pectorals for balance, his grip firm and unyielding on my hips. I looked up mortified, expecting him to mock my clumsiness. Instead, he was looking at me with an intensity that made my knees weak for an entirely different reason. "Careful, Sienna," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through my sternum. "If you wanted to be in my arms, you only had to ask. No need to throw yourself at the furniture." I wasn't throwing myself, I protested, my face burning hotter than the fire. It was the rug. It attacked me. "Treacherous rug," he agreed, his eyes dancing with amusement. He didn't let go. If anything, he pulled me closer, until there wasn't even a breath of space between us. "And the dress? Is that also part of the rug's conspiracy? Not because it seems designed to make me lose my mind." "Do you like it?" I asked, trying to salvage the seduction attempt. I traced a finger down the placket of his shirt, feeling the rapid thrum of his heart beneath the fabric. "I thought it might distract you." Draven let out a rough laugh, capturing my hand and pressing a kiss to the center of my palm. The sensation sent a jolt of electricity straight to my core. "Sienna, you could be wearing a potato sack, and I would still be unable to look away from you. You do not need the red dress. You do not need the tricks." He leaned down, his lips brushing against mine, soft and tantalizing. "You have never lost my attention. Not since the moment you walked into my hall." Chapter 5. The Nightmare and the Purr. The dream always started the same way. The smell of smoke. When the screams of the pack dying around me. I was 16 again, running through the woods, the branches whipping against my face like cruel fingers. I could hear the rogues behind me, their heavy paws thudding against the earth, their wet, snarling breath getting closer. I reached the river, thinking I was safe, thinking I could swim across to the territory line. But then the massive gray wolf was there, cutting off my escape. I felt the searing pain of his claws raking across my stomach, the agony that tore through my womb, the knowledge, cold and absolute, that something inside me had broken forever. I woke up gasping, my body drenched in cold sweat, a scream trapped in my throat. The room was pitch black, the fire having died down to embers hours ago. For a terrifying second, I didn't know where I was. I clutched at my stomach, expecting to feel blood. But my fingers met the soft cotton of Draven's shirt. which I was currently wearing because he had insisted the silk nightgown wasn't warm enough. The phantom pain in my scar throbbed, a cruel reminder of what I had lost, of the hollowness that made me unworthy of a mate, let alone a king. Then the bed shifted. A massive arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me backward until I was flush against a wall of solid, comforting warmth. Draven. He didn't say a word. He didn't ask me what was wrong or why my heart was racing like a trapped bird. He simply gathered me up, tucking my head under his chin and wrapping his legs around mine, effectively caging me in his body heat. And then he started to purr. It wasn't a sound exactly, it was a vibration. A deep, subsonic rumble that started in the center of his chest and resonated through mine. I had heard legends about the Lycan purr, that it was a primal, soothing mechanism used to calm distressed pups or mates. But feeling it was an entirely different experience. It seeped into my bones, loosening the knot of terror in my chest, slowing my frantic pulse to match the steady, heavy rhythm of his. It was a sound of absolute safety. It said, "I am here. I am the monster that keeps the other monsters away. Breathe, little wolf." He rumbled against the top of my head, his voice rough with sleep but incredibly gentle. "You are safe. I have you." "It was just a dream," I whispered, hating how weak I sounded. I tried to pull away, feeling the shame of my vulnerability. "I'm fine. Go back to sleep." Draven tightened his hold, refusing to let me retreat. "It was a memory," he corrected softly. His large hand moved to my stomach, resting directly over the scar through the fabric of the shirt. I froze, waiting for him to recoil, waiting for him to sense the damage beneath the skin. But he didn't. He just kept his hand there, warm and heavy and protective. "I can smell the fear on you, Sienna. It tastes like ash." "I'm sorry," I mumbled into his chest. "I didn't mean to wake you." "Do not apologize for needing me," he said, pressing a kiss to my hair. The purr deepened, rumbling against my back like a thunderstorm in the distance. I have not slept through the night in centuries. The silence is usually too loud. But with you, he trailed off, burying his face in my neck and inhaling deeply. "With you, the silence is peaceful. Now hush. Yes, let me chase the nightmares away." I lay there in the dark, enveloped by the most dangerous creature on the planet. And for the first time in 5 years, the pain in my scar faded into the background. I wasn't just a broken vessel or a failed assassin. I was safe, and that terrified me more than the rogues ever could. Chapter 6. Touch her and die. The peace of the night shattered the moment the sun came up. Reality returned with a vengeance in the form of a summons to the High Council. Draven couldn't ignore it, and because he was currently in a phase of obsessive possessiveness where he refused to let me be more than 5 feet away from him, I couldn't ignore it either. I stood beside his throne in the council chamber, wearing a high-collared dress that hid the bruises of exhaustion under my eyes. I tried to look regal while bored alphas argued about grain shipments and border disputes. Then Alpha Krell arrived. Krell was from the Southern Territories, a man with too much ambition and not enough chin. He strode into the center of the room, bowing perfunctorily to Draven before turning his sneering gaze on me. "I must protest, Your Majesty," Krell announced, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "We are discussing matters of lineage and inheritance. Is it appropriate for her to be present?" Draven didn't move. He leaned back in his throne, tapping one finger against the armrest. "Her," he repeated, his voice dangerously soft. "You mean my mate? My queen?" "I mean the girl from the river pack," Krell said with a dismissive wave of his hand. "We have all heard the rumors, sire. Her father couldn't wait to get rid of her. They say she is damaged goods. Barren stock." He laughed, a wet, ugly sound. "A king needs heirs, Draven, not a dry well. You should send her back to the kennels where she belongs, and take her real." The air in the room didn't just change, it evaporated. 1 second, Draven was sitting on his throne. The next, he was a blur of motion. There was a sickening crunch of impact. And then Alpha Krell was pinned against the far wall, his feet dangling 2 feet off the ground. Draven had him by the throat, his hand squeezing tight enough to turn Krell's face a mottled purple. The sound that tore from Draven's throat was not human. It was a roar of pure, unadulterated fury that shook the dust from the rafters. His eyes had gone completely black, the whites consumed by the beast. His canines had lengthened into fangs, glistening in the torchlight. "Oh, Draven!" I shouted, instinctively stepping forward. The guards drew their weapons, but they didn't aim at the king. They aimed at the other alphas, daring anyone to intervene. "You speak of her," Draven snarled, his voice a distorted, guttural growl. "As if she is livestock. As if she is not the very air I breathe." He slammed Krell against the stone again, harder this time. "She is not stock. She is the Lycan Queen, and if you ever look at her with anything other than absolute reverence, I will rip your tongue out and feed it to the crows." Krell choked, clawing uselessly at Draven's wrist. The scent of ozone and blood filled the room, Draven's power flaring out of control. "Release him," I said, my voice cutting through the violence. I wasn't saving Krell. I was saving Draven from starting a civil war. I walked up to him, placing a hand on his bicep. The muscle was rock hard, vibrating with rage. "Draven, look at me." He turned his head, his black alien eyes locking onto mine. For a heartbeat, I thought he didn't recognize me. Then slowly, the black receded, revealing a sliver of midnight blue. He dropped Krell, who collapsed to the floor, wheezing and gasping for air. Draven didn't even look at the man. He turned his back on the council, grabbing my face between his hands and checking me over frantically, as if the insults had physically wounded me. "Did he hurt you?" he demanded, his voice ragged. "Did you hear what he said? It is a lie, Sienna. You are perfect. You are everything." I stared up at him, my heart breaking. He defended me with a violence that terrified the world, but all I could think was, "It's not a lie, Draven. I am barren. And when you find out, you won't be killing men for me. You'll be the one sending me away." Chapter 7. The Heat Wave. The air in the citadel had changed. It wasn't just the temperature, though the stone walls seemed to be radiating a feverish warmth that had nothing to do with the fireplaces. It was a static charge, a constant low-level hum that made the hair on my arms stand up whenever Draven walked into a room. The mating heat was beginning to simmer, a biological countdown that made every glance feel like a touch, and every touch feel like a lightning strike. We were both on edge, snapping at servants and pacing the floors like caged tigers. Draven, in his infinite wisdom, decided that the best way to handle this overwhelming sexual frustration was violence. Specifically, sparring. We stood in the center of the private training ring, the mats smelling of leather and exertion. I had swapped my silk prison attire for leggings and a tank top, and Draven had stripped down to loose trousers, leaving his magnificent scarred chest bare to taunt me. He circled me slowly, his movements fluid and predatory, a smirk playing on his lips. "Come on, little wolf," he goaded, beckoning me with 2 fingers. "Show me what that silver-tipped dagger is for. Or are you only dangerous when I'm asleep?" I didn't need to be told twice. I launched myself at him, aiming a high kick at his jaw. He caught my ankle with laughable ease, but I used the momentum to twist in the air, bringing my other leg down toward his shoulder. He blocked it, his forearm colliding with my shin like an iron bar. The impact jarred my bones, but it felt good. It felt real. For the next 20 minutes, we were a blur of motion. I was fast, trained in the silent, dirty fighting style of assassins, but Draven was a tank. He absorbed my hits with a grunt of satisfaction, never striking back, only blocking and redirecting my energy until I was panting and slick with sweat. "You're holding back," I accused, breathing hard as we circled each other again. "Fight me for real." "If I fought you for real, Sienna, the fight would last 3 seconds and end with you pinned to the floor," he rumbled, his eyes darkening as they tracked a bead of sweat rolling down my neck. "And while I enjoy the mental image of you beneath me, I prefer you conscious." "Arrogant beast," I muttered and lunged. This time I managed to slip inside his guard, landing a solid punch to his ribs before sweeping his legs. He didn't fall, but he stumbled. And that was victory enough. I moved to capitalize on it, grappling for a hold, but he recovered instantly. One moment I was on the offensive. The next, the world spun, and I was flat on my back on the mat with 300 pounds of Lycan King hovering over me. His hips settled between my thighs, pinning me effectively and intimately. My breath hitched. The air between us crackled, thick and heavy. His face was inches from mine, his pupils blown wide, swallowing the blue. We were both breathing heavily, the sound filling the quiet room. The heat of his body seeped into mine, igniting a fire in my belly that had nothing to do with the exertion. He shifted slightly, the friction sending a jolt of pleasure straight to my core that made my toes curl. "I win," he whispered, his voice rough. "You cheated," I gasped, unable to look away from his mouth. "I'm a king," he murmured, lowering his head until his nose brushed against mine. "I make the rules." His gaze dropped to my lips, hungry and intense. "And right now, the rule is that you don't move." I didn't want to move. I wanted to wrap my legs around his waist and pull him down. I wanted to forget the mission, the poison, and the brother waiting for me to save him. I tilted my chin up, my lips parting in a silent invitation. Draven groaned, a low, vibrating sound in his chest, and began to close the final inch of distance. "Your Majesty!" The training room doors banged open. A breathless guard stumbled in, looking terrified as Draven's head snapped up with a snarl that shook the walls. The guard held up a sealed scroll with trembling hands. "A message, sire, from the river pack. It's marked urgent for the Queen." Draven looked back down at me, the heat in his eyes cooling into something sharp and dangerous. He rolled off me, offering a hand to pull me up. "It seems your family has terrible timing," he growled. I took the scroll, my stomach plummeting. The heat was gone, replaced by the icy grip of reality. Chapter 8. The Poison in My Pocket. The message from my brother Jax was short, coded, and devastating. "The river rises tonight. If the dam doesn't break, we all drown." It wasn't a weather report. It was an ultimatum. Kill the king tonight, or my father would execute Jax for my failure. I crumbled the parchment in my fist, staring into the fireplace of our shared bedroom. The flames danced merrily, mocking the cold dread spreading through my veins. I had spent days convincing myself I had time. Time to find another way, time to negotiate, time to just exist in this strange stolen happiness with Draven. But time had run out. Draven was in the bathroom, washing off the sweat from our sparring match. I could hear him humming a low, tuneless melody, the sound of a man without a care in the world, a man who felt safe in his own home, a man who trusted the woman waiting in his bedroom. I felt bile rise in my throat. I reached into the hidden pocket of my corset and pulled out the vial of liquid silver. It shimmered in the firelight, deadly and beautiful. It was a slow-acting toxin, painless but absolute. It would stop his heart in his sleep, looking for all the world like a natural failure. A mercy, my father had called it. "Did you enjoy the sparring?" Draven asked. From walking out of the bathroom with a towel slung low around his hips and water droplets clinging to his hair. He looked magnificent, a masterpiece of muscle and power, and my heart broke a little more. He walked over to the side table where a crystal decanter of amber brandy sat waiting. "I think I earned a drink. Would you like one?" "No," I said, my voice sounding hollow to my own ears. "You have one. Suit yourself." He reached for the decanter. "Wait," I blurted out. He paused, looking at me with those midnight eyes full of warmth. "Let me pour it for you. You relax." Draven smiled, a genuine boyish expression that took 10 years off his face. "Spoiling me, little wolf. I could get used to this." He sat on the edge of the bed, watching me. I turned my back to him, my hands shaking as I uncorked the decanter. I could feel his gaze on my spine, heavy and affectionate. He had no idea I was about to end him. I uncorked the vial. Just one drop. That was all it took for a Lycan. My hand hovered over his glass. I thought of Jax, his gentle smile, his inability to fight back against our father. I thought of the pack suffering under my father's tyranny. And then I thought of Draven holding me through my nightmares. Draven defending me against the council. Draven purring against my neck. "Do it!" a voice screamed in my head. "Save your brother." I tilted the vial. A single pearlescent drop fell into the amber liquid and dissolved instantly. The deed was done. The weapon was loaded. I turned around, forcing a smile onto my face that felt like a rictus of pain. I walked toward him, the glass heavy in my hand. "Here," I whispered. "E for the king." Draven took the glass, his fingers brushing against mine. The contact sent that familiar spark shooting up my arm, a cruel reminder of the bond I was about to sever. "For us," he corrected softly, raising the glass in a toast. "To the day I finally convince you that you belong here." He brought the glass to his lips. I watched, frozen in horror, as the liquid tilted toward his mouth. This was it. The end of the Lycan King. The end of the only man who had ever looked at me and seen a queen. Chapter 9. The Broken Vessel. "Stop!" The scream tore out of my throat before I could stop it. I lunged forward, slapping the glass from his hand. It shattered against the stone floor, the amber liquid splattering across the bear fur rug, the scent of expensive brandy filling the air. Draven didn't flinch. He didn't look angry. He just looked at the shattered glass, then up at me, his expression unreadable. "That was good brandy, Sienna," he said quietly. "Is there a reason it is now on the floor?" I stood there, chest heaving, tears streaming down my face. I couldn't do it. I couldn't kill him. I would rather let my father burn the world down than watch the light go out in Draven's eyes. But I couldn't let him keep me either. If I stayed, I would eventually destroy him. My father would never stop. And even if we survived the assassins, I was still broken. I was still a dead end for his royal line. "I can't," I sobbed, backing away from him. "I can't do this anymore, Draven. You have to send me away. You have to let me go." Draven stood up slowly, stepping over the broken glass. "And why would I do that?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. "We are mates. But the bond is settling. You are mine." "Because I'm broken!" I screamed. The secret I had carried for 5 years, finally clawing its way into the light. My father didn't just sell you a bride, he sold you a lie. I was attacked by a rogue when I was 16. He tore me apart. I grabbed my stomach, digging my fingers into the scar through my clothes. "I am barren, Draven. I can't give you an heir. I can't give you a dynasty. I am a dead branch on your family tree." Silence crashed into the room, heavy and suffocating. I waited for the disgust. I waited for the anger. I waited for him to realize that the Alpha Krell had been right all along, that I was useless stock. I squeezed my eyes shut, unable to watch the love turn to hate. "Is that it?" Draven's voice was closer now. "Is that the great secret that has you terrified?" My eyes flew open, and he was standing right in front of me, but he wasn't looking at me with pity. He was looking at me with relief? "I just told you I can't give you pups," I whispered, confused. "Don't you understand? A king needs heirs. It's your duty." Draven let out a short, sharp laugh. He reached out and cupped my face, his thumbs wiping away the tears tracking down my cheeks. Sienna, look at me. I have a kingdom that spans the continent. I have an army of thousands. I have wealth beyond measure. Do you really think I need more things? But your legacy, I stammered. You are my legacy, he growled, leaning down until his forehead rested against mine. I have spent centuries alone in this castle, surrounded by people who only want something from me. I don't want a broodmare. I don't want a dynasty. He kissed the tip of my nose, his voice dropping to a fierce whisper. I want you. I want the woman who tries to stab me with cheese knives. I want the woman who challenges me in the training ring. But if there are no heirs, I started, hope fluttering in my chest like a terrified bird. If there are no pups, Draven interrupted, pulling me into his arms and burying his face in my neck, inhaling deeply. Then I get to keep you all to myself. I don't have to share your attention with anyone. And frankly, little wolf, I am a very jealous creature. I went limp in his arms, the weight of 5 years of shame dissolving under the heat of his acceptance. He didn't care. He really, truly didn't care. You're an idiot, I choked out, laughing through a fresh wave of tears. I'm your idiot, he agreed, lifting me off my feet and carrying me toward the bed. Now, stop trying to fire yourself. The position has been filled, permanently. He laid me down on the mattress, his body following mine, heavy and warm. But as he kissed me, slow and reverent, a cold knot of dread formed in my stomach. I looked over his shoulder at the shattered glass on the floor. I hadn't told him about the poison, and my brother was still waiting for a death that wasn't going to happen. Chapter 10. A king on his knees, lying in the arms of the man I was supposed to murder, was a complication my assassination training had not prepared me for. Draven was heavy and warm against me, his breathing slowly sinking with mine, his large hand tracing soothing, possessive circles on my hip. The confession about my infertility hung in the air, but instead of the cold rejection I had feared for 5 years, it had been met with a fiercely protective warmth that made my chest ache. I buried my face in the crook of his neck, inhaling the scent of rain and dark chocolate, and allowed myself a single dangerous moment of pure contentment. I was safe. I was wanted. I was happy. You are thinking too loud, Draven murmured, his chest rumbling against my cheek. I can hear the gears turning in that stubborn head of yours. Stop it. You are my queen. There is nothing else to think about. I'm just, I hesitated, tracing the line of the wolf tattoo over his heart. I'm just waiting for you to realize you made a terrible investment. No heirs, a moody disposition, and I tried to stab you with a cheese knife. You could have had the Duchess of the Southern Isles. I hear she bakes. Draven snorted, a sound of pure derision. The Duchess smells like desperate perfume and ambition. You smell like ozone and trouble. I prefer trouble. He shifted, sitting up slightly and reaching toward the nightstand. But all this emotional honesty has made me thirsty. And since you threw my last drink on the floor, a tragedy I am still mourning, by the way, I am going to pour myself another. My blood ran cold. I froze, my fingers digging into his bicep. In my panic earlier, I had slapped the glass from his hand. Yes. But I had put the liquid silver into the decanter. The entire crystal vessel sitting on the silver tray was laced with enough toxin to stop a heart in 3 beats. And Draven was currently reaching for it, his movements lazy and relaxed, completely unaware that death was sitting within arm's reach. Draven, no, I whispered, my voice strangled. He paused, his hand hovering over the crystal stopper. He looked down at me, his eyebrows raising in amusement. No! Are you forbidding me from drinking in my own bedroom, little wolf? You are becoming quite bossy for a hostage. You don't need it, I stammered, scrambling to sit up. The sheets pooled at my waist, leaving me shivering in the sudden absence of his body heat. It's late. Alcohol disrupts your REM cycle. You said you haven't slept in centuries. You should drink water. Hydration is key to ruling a kingdom. Draven's amusement deepened. He picked up the decanter, the amber liquid sloshing innocently against the glass. I am a Lycan, Sienna. My liver can process arsenic before breakfast. A little brandy won't hurt me. He reached for a fresh glass, the crystal clinking softly in the quiet room. Don't, I said, and louder this time. Panic clawed at my throat. If he drank that, he died. If he died, I survived, my brother lived, and I would be free. It was exactly what I had come here to do. It was the mission. It was my duty. But looking at him, at the messy hair I had run my fingers through, at the mouth that had just kissed my scars with reverence, I knew I would burn the entire world before I let a drop of that poison pass his lips. Draven poured the liquid. The sound was deafening. He lifted the glass, swirling it under his nose, inhaling the bouquet. You are acting strange, he noted, his eyes locking onto mine over the rim. Stranger than usual. Put it down, I begged, reaching for his wrist. Draven, please, just put it down. He didn't put it down. Instead, he brought the glass closer to his lips, his gaze never leaving my face. The playfulness vanished, replaced by a sharp, terrifying intelligence. He held the glass there, hovering inches from his mouth, watching my pupils dilate in terror. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't drink this, he said softly. Because I don't want you to, I cried, grabbing his wrist with both hands. Not good enough, he whispered. He tilted the glass. Chapter 11. The Truth About the Treaty. The glass touched his lips. It's poisoned, I screamed, the truth tearing out of me like a physical wound. I poisoned it. It's liquid silver. Don't drink it, you idiot. I slapped his hand again, harder this time, fueled by adrenaline and sheer terror. The glass flew across the room, shattering against the stone fireplace. The amber liquid hissed as it hit the embers, sending up a plume of acrid, metallic smoke that smelled nothing like brandy and everything like death. Silence crashed back into the room, heavier than before. I couldn't breathe. I knelt on the bed, chest heaving, staring at the stain on the hearth. I had done it. I had confessed. It was over. The guards would come. I would be executed. But at least he was alive. I turned slowly to face him, waiting for the betrayal, waiting for the monster to emerge and tear me apart. Draven wasn't looking at the fire. He was looking at me. And he wasn't surprised. He sat on the edge of the bed, resting his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped loosely in front of him. He looked tired, resigned, but not shocked. I know, he said quietly. 2 words. They hit me harder than a physical blow. I blinked, my brain stuttering to a halt. You. What? I know, he repeated, turning his head to meet my gaze. His eyes were sad, swirling with a mixture of disappointment, and something that looked painfully like affection. I knew before you even stepped foot in the Citadel. My spies in the river pack intercepted your father's communications weeks ago. I knew about the dagger. I knew about the poison. I knew you were coming here to kill me. I stared at him, horror washing over me. You knew? And you let me in? You let me sleep in your bed? I wanted to see if you would go through with it, Draven murmured. He reached out, his hand hovering near my knee before pulling back, as if he wasn't sure he was allowed to touch me anymore. I wanted to see if the woman I saw in my visions, the mate my soul recognized the moment you walked into the hall, was stronger than the assassin her father created. You were testing me? I whispered, anger flickering through the shame. This was a game to you? It wasn't a game, Sienna. It was a gamble. He stood up, pacing toward the window, his back to me. I bet my life on you. My advisors told me to have you executed at the border. They told me you were a liability. But then I saw you. He turned back, his silhouette framed by the moonlight. I saw the fear in your eyes, yes. But I also saw the fire. I saw a woman who would burn down the world to save the people she loved. And I thought, perhaps she could learn to love me too. You drank the first glass, I said, my voice shaking. In the great hall. But you drank from the cup I handed you. I switched the cups, he admitted with a shrug. Sleight of hand, a useful skill for a king. You arrogant, manipulative. I scrambled off the bed, marching toward him. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to kiss him. I settled for shoving his chest with both hands. He didn't budge an inch. I could have killed you. I almost did. Do you have any idea how terrified I was? Yes, Draven said, catching my wrists and pulling me flush against him. I saw it. I saw you slap the glass from my hand. You saved me, little wolf. In the end, you chose me. Of course I chose you, I yelled, struggling against his grip. I love you, you impossible beast. I chose you over my family, over my duty, over everything. Draven went still. The air in the room shifted, the tension snapping into something electric and raw. I say that again, he growled, his voice dropping to that dangerous, vibrating register. I chose you, I breathed, looking up into his eyes. No, the other part. I love you. Draven let out a sound that was half laugh, half groan, and crushed his mouth to mine. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a claiming. It was a seal on a contract that had nothing to do with politics and everything to do with souls. I wrapped my arms around his neck, melting into him, surrendering to the pull that had been there since the beginning. I choose you too, he murmured against my lips. I choose you, my assassin, my traitor, my queen. Crash. The stained glass window behind us exploded inward in a shower of colorful shards. Chapter 12. The Assassin's Strike. Like the sound of shattering glass was followed instantly by the thud of heavy boots hitting the stone floor. Cold night air rushed into the room, carrying the scent of intruders, wet fur, steel, and the distinct rot-like stench of rogue wolves. Draven reacted before I could even scream. He spun us around, shielding my body with his own, shoving me toward the heavy oak wardrobe. Stay down, he roared, his voice changing, deepening into the guttural command of the alpha. 3 figures emerged from the shadows of the balcony. They were dressed in black tactical gear, faces covered, but I didn't need to see their faces to know who they were. They moved with the jerky, unnatural speed of wolves, pumped full of adrenaline and dark magic. My father's backup plan. He hadn't trusted me to finish the job. Kill the king, the leader shouted, a lunging forward with a serrated blade that glowed with a sickly green light. Wolfsbane, concentrated and weaponized. Draven didn't shift. There wasn't time. He met the attacker head-on in human form, catching the man's wrist mid-swing. There was a sickening crack of bone, a scream, and then Draven hurled the assassin across the room as if he were a rag doll. The man hit the stone wall and didn't get up, but the other 2 were already moving. One went for Draven's flank, while the other, a smaller, faster wolf, darted toward me. Sienna! Draven shouted, turning to intercept, but the first attacker slashed at his back. Draven roared in pain, the sound vibrating in my teeth, but he didn't stop. He backhanded the man with enough force to shatter his jaw, his eyes glowing pure black. The third assassin was on me. I didn't have time to think. Instinct took over. As he lunged, I dropped to the floor, sweeping his legs. He fell hard, but scrambled up instantly, a dagger in his hand. I reached for the only weapon I had, the cheese knife Draven had confiscated earlier, which was still sitting on the chair. It wasn't a sword, but it was sharp enough. As the assassin lunged, I dodged left and drove the small blade into the soft spot between his armor plates, right into his shoulder. He howled, dropping his weapon. I kicked it away and scrambled back, breathing hard. Nice aim, Draven growled, appearing out of nowhere to finish the job. He grabbed the assassin by the back of the neck and threw him into the hallway, unconscious. The room fell silent, save for our ragged breathing. The 3 assassins were down. It was over. "Are you hurt?" Draven demanded, turning to me. He was wild-eyed, his chest heaving, blood soaking the back of his shirt. He reached for me, his hands shaking. "Did they touch you? If they touched you, I will resurrect them just to kill them again." "I'm fine," I gasped, stepping toward him. "Draven, you're back." "It's nothing," he dismissed, cupping my face. "Scratches. I heal fast." But as he spoke, his skin went gray. He swayed, his grip on my face loosening. His eyes, usually so intense, lost focus, the black retreating to a muddy, dull blue. "Draven?" I grabbed his arms to steady him. He was burning up. His skin felt like a furnace under my palms. "Sienna," he whispered, his voice sounding thick and wrong. "I feel—" He collapsed. I caught him, but his weight was too much. We went down together, my knees hitting the floor hard as I cushioned his head. "Draven! Stay with me!" I rolled him over. The slash on his back wasn't healing. It was festering, the edges turning black and oozing a dark viscous fluid. The smell of rot filled the air. It wasn't just wolfsbane, it was magic. Ancient, forbidden magic meant to kill a creature that couldn't be killed by mortal means. "No, no, no," I sobbed, pressing my hands against the wound, trying to staunch the flow of black blood. "You don't get to die, you hear me? You don't get to prove a point and then die." Draven's eyes fluttered open. He looked at me, a faint lopsided smile touching his lips. "My brave little wolf," he wheezed, "you chose me." Then his eyes rolled back in his head, and the Lycan King went still. Chapter 13. The Only Cure. The silence in the room was heavier than the stone walls surrounding us, broken only by the ragged, wet sound of Draven fighting for every breath. I knelt beside the bed, my hands pressed hard against the wound on his back, but the black, viscous fluid seeping between my fingers refused to clot. It wasn't blood. It was corruption. The poison from the assassin's blade was eating through the Lycan's impossible vitality like acid through silk, turning the golden skin of his back a terrifying shade of gray. My own heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a stark contrast to the slowing beat beneath my palms. I had come here to stop his heart, and now that it was actually stopping, I felt like the world was ending. "Move, child. Unless you plan to heal him with tears, get out of the way." The pack healer, an ancient gnarled wolf named Elder Bram, who looked like he had been carved from driftwood, shoved me aside with surprising strength. He didn't waste time with pleasantries or panic. He ripped the ruined shirt from Draven's back, his milky eyes narrowing as he inspected the wound. He muttered a curse that sounded ancient and forbidden, prodding the edges of the gash. Draven didn't even flinch. That was the worst part. The man who growled if a servant dropped a spoon was now lying motionless while someone dug into his flesh. "It's wolfsbane," I choked out, wiping my bloody hands on my dress. "Concentrated, and something else. Magic." "It is necrotic ash," Bram corrected, his voice grim. "Blade forged in the fires of the Deadlands. It kills the regeneration cells. His wolf is fighting it, but the beast is losing. The poison is already in his bloodstream, shutting down his organs one by one." He stood up, wiping his hands on a rag, and looked at me with an expression that terrified me more than the assassin had. "I cannot stop it. The Lycan physiology is rejecting my salves. He is too strong for mortal medicine, and right now, his strength is working against him, pumping the poison faster." "So do something else," I screamed, grabbing the old man's tunic. "You're the healer. Heal him. Use magic. Use leeches. I don't know, just fix him." Bram sighed, removing my hands from his clothes with surprising gentleness. "There is no medicine for this, little wolf, but there is a cure. The Lycan bond." He gestured to the unconscious king. His soul is tethered to yours. You are fated. The bond between true mates is not just poetic nonsense, it is a transfer of life force. And it is the only thing powerful enough to burn the ash from his veins. I stared at him, my brain stuttering. A transfer of life force? What does that mean? Do I hold his hand? Pray? Bram looked at me like I was an idiot. No, girl, you must mark him. You must complete the bond. Tonight. Now. My mouth fell open. You want me to bite him? While he's dying? The mating mark acts as a conduit, Bram explained, speaking slowly as if to a toddler. But it requires energy to seal, immense energy. You need to wake his wolf up. You need to spike his adrenaline, his oxytocin, his dominance. You need to make him want to live more than he wants, to succumb to the dark. The old man coughed, looking pointedly at the ceiling. You need to engage him, aggressively. If his heart rate doesn't rise, the bite won't take. And he will be dead by sunrise. I looked from the healer to Draven, who was looking paler by the second. You want me to seduce a dying man? I want you to save your king, Bram snapped, grabbing his bag. I will be outside the door. Do not be gentle, Sienna. Gentleness will kill him. He is a predator. He responds to instinct. Make him respond. Then he was gone, the heavy door clicking shut, leaving me alone with the man I loved, and a set of instructions that made my face burn. This was insane. This was impossible. But then Draven let out a low, pained wheeze, his brow furrowing in unconscious agony, and my hesitation evaporated. I wasn't going to let him go. Not now. Not when we had just found each other. I climbed onto the massive bed, the mattress dipping under my weight. I straddled his hips, sitting back on my heels. I looking down at his beautiful, devastating face. He looked peaceful, almost boyish, without the constant weight of the crown on his brow. I reached out, tracing the line of his jaw, my thumb brushing over his lips. Draven, I whispered, leaning down until my hair brushed his cheeks. Wake up. He didn't move. Okay, I muttered, my hands moving to the buckle of his belt. We're doing this the hard way. I leaned closer, my lips hovering over his ear, and let my own wolf rise to the surface, the part of me that had been dormant for years, the part that recognized him as mine. You don't get to leave me, Draven. You promised to keep me. You promised I was your legacy. I ran my hands up his chest, digging my nails, just slightly, into the muscle. So if you don't wake up right now and claim me, I'm going to tell everyone you sleep with a teddy bear. Nothing. But then, as I pressed a kiss to the hollow of his throat, right over his pulse point, I felt it. A skip. A flutter. A change in the rhythm. That's it, I breathed, shifting my weight, letting my hips grind down against him with deliberate, desperate friction. Come back to me, Wolf. Come back and fight. I moved my hair to one side, baring my neck to him, releasing my scent, distress, desire, and pure, unadulterated need, into the air. Then I lowered my mouth to the junction of his neck and shoulder, the exact spot where a wolf would claim his mate. I let my teeth graze the skin, scraping lightly, teasing the beast beneath the surface. Beneath me, Draven's body went rigid. A low, guttural growl started in his chest, vibrating through my thighs. His hands, which had been limp at his sides, twitched. Open your eyes, I commanded, my voice trembling with a mixture of terror and arousal. I grabbed his shoulders, pinning him to the mattress. Open your eyes, Draven. Look at me. His eyelids fluttered. Then slowly, they dragged open. The blue was gone. There was only black. The endless, consuming black of the Lycan in full ascendancy. He stared up at me, confused, drugged, and undeniably hungry. Sienna, he rasped, his voice sounding like gravel grinding together. Don't you dare die on me, I hissed, leaning down until our lips were inches apart. I forbid it. I raised myself up, positioning my mouth over the thick muscle of his shoulder, and prepared to do the one thing I had sworn I would never do. I prepared to bind my soul to a monster. "Bite me," I whispered to his wolf. "Claim me." And then before he could respond, I sank my teeth into him. Chapter 14. The Marking. I sank my teeth into the junction of his neck and shoulder, biting down hard enough to draw blood. It wasn't a gentle nip. It was a desperate, primitive claim. A physical demand for his soul to tether itself to mine. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but the taste of copper and the terrifying stillness of his body beneath me. I squeezed my eyes shut, tears leaking out to mix with the sweat on his skin, my jaw aching from the force of the bite. I poured everything I had into that contact, my fear, my rage, the love I had tried so hard to deny. I shoved my energy down the bond like a battering ram, screaming silently at his stubborn, dying wolf to wake up and fight back. "Don't you dare leave me," I thought. The plea echoing in the hollow space where our connection should be. "You promised I was your legacy. You don't get to break a promise to a queen." Then the world exploded. A shockwave of pure golden fire erupted from the point of contact, blasting through my veins with the force of a lightning strike. It was so intense I gasped, my mouth flying open, breaking the physical connection, but leaving the metaphysical one blazing. Beneath me, Draven arched off the mattress, a guttural roar tearing from his throat that shook the very foundation of the citadel. It wasn't a sound of pain anymore. It was a sound of awakening. His hands, which had been limp and cold moments ago, shot up to grip my hips with bruising force, his fingers digging into my flesh as if I were the only thing anchoring him to the earth. The gray pallor of his skin flushed with sudden violent color, the black veins of the necrotic poison receding as if burned away by an internal sun. "Sienna," he choked out, his voice wrecked but undeniably alive. His eyes flew open, and they were no longer the dull, muddy color of death. They were burning, glowing with an inner luminescence that was equal parts terrifying and beautiful. He looked at me with a hunger that made my breath hitch, a raw, starving need that had nothing to do with food. You bit me." "I marked you," I corrected, breathless and trembling from the aftershocks of the power transfer. I collapsed forward, resting my forehead against his sheen of sweat. "The healer said, he said I had to wake you up. He said I had to make you want to live." I let out a wet, shaky laugh, tracing the fresh, bleeding crescent on his shoulder. "I think it worked. You're terrifyingly warm." "You marked me," he repeated, the words sounding like a prayer. He shifted, rolling us over in a blur of motion until my back hit the mattress, and he was hovering above me, a mountain of revitalized muscle and possessive intent. He didn't look like a man who had been at death's door seconds ago. He looked like a god of war who had just conquered a new territory. My mate, my savior. He buried his face in my neck, inhaling deeply, his nose brushing against my pulse point. "I felt you calling me. In the dark. You were loud, little wolf. You were screaming at the void to give me back." "I hate the void," I whispered, wrapping my arms around his neck and pulling him closer, desperate to feel the heavy, steady thud of his heart against my chest. It's quiet and boring, and I don't like it. Stay here. Stay with me." "I am never leaving," he growled against my skin, his lips moving to capture mine in a kiss that tasted of life and desperation. It wasn't gentle. It was a collision, a frantic reassertion of existence. The bond between us snapped into place with a physical weight, a golden chain linking my soul to his. I could feel him in my head, his relief, his overwhelming adoration, the fierce protective instinct that roared mine over and over again. And he could feel me. I knew he could feel the sheer terror I had felt watching him die and the explosion of joy that was currently flooding my system. "You realize," he murmured against my mouth, his hand sliding up to cup my jaw. "That by marking me, you have effectively declared war on anyone who ever looks at me sideways. You have claimed the Lycan King. You are stuck with the consequences." "I think I can handle a few consequences," I replied, running my fingers through his damp hair. "I handled you when you were trying to feed me soup and intimidate my father. A fully healed Lycan can't be much worse." Draven laughed, a low rumble that vibrated against my chest, and the sound was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. "Challenge accepted." He kissed me again, slower this time, deeper, pouring his life force back into me, balancing the scales. The room seemed to fade away, leaving only the heat of his skin, the weight of his body, and the golden hum of the bond singing between us. But as the adrenaline faded and the intimacy deepened, shifting from frantic healing to something softer and more profound, I felt a strange sensation. Oh, it started as a warmth in my lower belly, right beneath the jagged silver scar that had defined my life for 5 years. It wasn't pain. It was a tingling, soothing heat, like a warm hand pressing against a bruise. It spread outward, radiating through my hips and down my legs, dissolving the phantom ache that usually flared when I was tired or stressed. I frowned against Draven's lips, confused by the feeling. It felt knitting. It felt like something broken was being put back together, cell by microscopic cell. "Draven," I whispered, pulling back slightly to look at him. "Hush," he murmured, his eyes closed, his forehead resting against mine. "Just breathe. Let the bond settle. It is fixing what was broken." I froze. He meant his back. He meant the poison damage. But the heat in my womb was growing stronger, pulsing in time with his heartbeat, warm and vibrant and undeniably alive. I pressed my hand to my stomach, bewildered, as the silver scar seemed to pulse under my fingertips. Surely the bond couldn't fix that. That was impossible. That was a dead thing, wasn't it? Chapter 15. The Morning After. Waking up used to be a cold, solitary experience, a daily reminder of the empty space beside me where a future should have been. Now, waking up felt like being pinned beneath a boulder that smelled of rainstorms and dark chocolate. A boulder that radiated heat like a furnace and possessed a heartbeat so slow and steady it lulled me back toward sleep. I tried to shift, testing the weight of the arm draped across my waist. But the moment I moved, the arm tightened, pulling me flush against a chest that was terrifyingly solid. Draven wasn't just asleep. He was actively holding me hostage in the sheets, his nose buried in the curve of my neck, his breath ghosting over the sensitive skin where he had marked me in return the night before. I wiggled again, more forcefully this time, and a low rumbling groan vibrated through his chest, resonating in my own ribcage. "Stop moving," he mumbled into my hair, his voice rough with sleep and heavy with satisfaction. "It is illegal to move. I passed a law while you were sleeping. The penalty is death by tickling." "You are a tyrant," I whispered, though I couldn't keep the smile out of my voice. I managed to twist in his grip just enough to look at him. He was a mess of dark hair and sharp angles, his eyes still closed, looking younger and softer than the terrifying king who commanded armies. But my gaze was drawn instantly to his shoulder, the place where the necrotic poison had been eating him alive just hours ago. The gray, rotting flesh was gone. In its place was smooth, healthy skin, marred only by a silver scar and the distinct bruising crescent of my teeth marks. The sight of it, of my claim branded into his flesh, sent a jolt of heat straight to my belly, a mixture of pride and embarrassment that made my toes curl. Draven's eyes cracked open, revealing slivers of midnight blue that sharpened instantly as they landed on me. He wasn't groggy. He was awake, alert, and looking at me with an intensity that made the air in the room thicken. "You are staring at your handiwork," he noted, shifting so that he was looming over me, bracing his weight on his elbows. He rolled his shoulder. wincing slightly, but grinning like a cat who had caught the canary. "You have a vicious bite, little wolf. I think I am going to need stitches. Or perhaps just a very thorough kiss to make it better." "I saved your life," I reminded him, reaching up to trace the bite mark with my fingertip. The skin was warm, alive, pulsing with the bond that now hummed between us like a golden wire. "The healer said I had to wake your wolf up. I didn't think asking nicely would work." "It worked," he agreed, capturing my hand and pressing a kiss to my palm, his eyes darkening. "You woke him up, Sienna, and now you have to deal with him." He lowered his head, nuzzling my jaw. "I have never felt power like that. When you marked me, it felt like being struck by lightning and drowning at the same time. And it felt like coming home. It felt like panic," I corrected breathlessly, as his hand slid down my spine, resting possessively on my hip. "I thought I was going to lose you. I thought the poison was going to win." "Nothing beats you," he murmured against my lips. "Poison, assassins, stubborn kings. You conquer them all." He kissed me then, a slow, lazy exploration that tasted of morning and promise. It wasn't the desperate, frantic collision of the night before. It was the confident claim of a man who knew he had forever. I melted into him, wrapping my legs around his waist, feeling the undeniable evidence of his recovery pressing against my thigh. "We should get up," I gasped when he finally pulled back to breathe, though I made no move to leave the bed. "You have a kingdom to run. There are assassins to interrogate. Walls to fix." I gestured vaguely toward the shattered window, which was currently letting in a draft that chilled the sweat on my skin. "Let the kingdom burn," Draven growled, burying his face in my cleavage. "I am busy. I have a queen to worship, and I haven't even finished counting your freckles yet. I am only on number 4. "I don't have freckles there," I laughed, trying to push his heavy head away, but he was immovable. "Then I will put some there," he threatened playfully, nipping at my skin. "I will cover you in marks until everyone knows exactly who you belong to. I want to walk into the council room with you and watch them choke on their jealousy." "You are impossible," I sighed, running my fingers through his hair. "And you are going to get us both fired." "I cannot be fired. I am the king." He looked up, his expression sobering slightly, the playfulness replaced by a fierce, terrifying devotion. "And you are my mate. Do you understand what that means, Sienna? It means you are not just my wife. You are my equal, my tether. If I am the storm, you are the eye. We do not leave this bed until I am certain you know that." I opened my mouth to tell him that I knew, that I felt it in every beat of my heart, but a sharp, frantic knocking at the heavy oak door shattered the moment. Draven stiffened, the playfulness vanishing instantly, replaced by the cold, lethal stillness of the alpha. He rolled off me, placing himself between me and the door in a single fluid motion, a low growl building in his throat. "Enter!" he barked, the command vibrating with irritation. The door creaked open, revealing the captain of the guard. He looked pale, his eyes wide as he took in the shattered window, the blood-stained rug, and his king, who was gloriously naked and looking ready to murder the messenger. "Forgive me, sire," the captain stammered, keeping his eyes firmly on the floor. "But we have a situation at the gates." "Unless the citadel is on fire, it can wait," Draven snapped. "It is not fire, sire," the captain said, swallowing hard. "It is Alpha Kalen, of the River Pack. He is demanding an audience. He says he has come to collect his daughter's body, and to inquire why the king is not yet dead." Chapter 16. The Alpha of Alphas. There is a specific kind of silence that falls over a room when a predator enters. A primal hush that signals the bottom of the food chain recognizing the top. I had felt that silence the first day I arrived at the Citadel, terrified and alone. But today, walking into the Great Hall with the Lycan King at my side, the silence felt different. It wasn't pressing down on me anymore. It was parting for me. Draven walked with his hand possessed at the small of my back, His fingers spread wide over the silk of the midnight blue gown he had personally selected. He had forbidden me from wearing anything that covered my neck, insisting with a dark, smug satisfaction that the fresh, bruising bite mark where he had claimed me should be visible to every wolf with working eyes. "Let them look," he had growled against my ear as we paused before the massive oak doors. "Let them see exactly who keeps you warm at night. If your father wants to know why I am not dead, he need only look at your throat to find the answer." The doors boomed open, and we stepped into the cavernous space. My father, an alpha Kalen, stood near the dais, flanked by two nervous lieutenants. He looked impatient, checking his pocket watch, clearly expecting a funeral procession or a body bag. When his eyes landed on Draven, alive, glowing with health, and radiating enough aggressive energy to power a small city, the blood drained from Kalen's face so fast I thought he might faint. He staggered back a step, his mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled from the river. Then his gaze slid to me, and the shock turned to a mixture of confusion and dawning horror as he took in the confident set of my shoulders and the undeniable mark of the Lycan King branded into my skin. "King Draven!" Kalen stammered, his voice cracking. We were told there was an incident. We heard the citadel had been breached. I came to collect my daughter's remains and offer my condolences." "Condolences?" Draven's voice was a low, smooth rumble that echoed off the stone walls, terrifyingly conversational. He didn't stop walking until we were looming over my father, forcing the older wolf to crane his neck to look him in the eye. "That is fascinating, Kalen, because the only thing that died last night was your ambition." Draven tightened his grip on my waist, pulling me flush against his side in a display of ownership so blatant it made the guards by the wall shift uncomfortably. "As for your daughter, as you can see, she is very much alive. In fact, she has never been better. Have you, my queen?" "Never better," I agreed, my voice steady. For years, this man had controlled every breath I took, made me feel small and broken. But standing next to Draven, as bathed in the warmth of our bond, Kalen looked pathetic. He looked like a small angry dog barking at a storm. Kalen's eyes darted to the mark on my neck, and his nostrils flared. You claimed her?" he whispered, revulsion and disbelief warring in his tone. "Her? The barren one? You mated with the broken vessel?" The air in the room dropped 10 degrees. Draven didn't shout. He didn't roar. He simply leaned forward, his eyes bleeding into that terrifying, endless black. "Careful," he whispered, the sound scraping over my nerves like sandpaper. "You are speaking to the Lycan Queen. If you insult her again, I will not banish you. I will unmake you." Kalen trembled, his alpha dominance crumbling under the weight of a true apex. "But the treaty, the heir." "The treaty is rewritten," Draven declared, Ace straightening to his full height. "There is no more river pack under your rule. Your lands are now hers. Your title is forfeit." He looked down at me, his expression softening from murderous rage to absolute devotion. "Sienna, he is your father. His fate is yours to decide. Say the word, and I will tear his throat out right here on the rug. It would be messy, but I am willing to make the effort for you." I looked at my father. I waited for the fear, the guilt, the old conditioning to kick in. But there was nothing. Just a profound sense of pity for a man who had traded his own blood for power and lost both. Killing him would be too easy. It would give him a warrior's exit he didn't deserve. "I don't want his blood on the rug, Draven," I said, smoothing the lapel of the king's jacket. It's a nightmare to get out of fur." I turned to Kalen, meeting his gaze with icy calm. "You are stripped of your rank, Kalen. You are no longer alpha. You are no longer my father. You will leave these lands tonight, and if you ever step foot in my territory again, the king won't have to kill you. I will do it myself." Kalen opened his mouth to protest, to beg, to rage, but Draven let out a short, sharp growl that silenced him instantly. The guard stepped forward, seizing the former alpha by the arms and dragging him toward the doors. He didn't look back. He knew, just as we all did, that he was lucky to be leaving, with his head still attached to his shoulders. As the doors slammed shut, sealing us in the quiet victory of the hall, Draven turned to me, his eyes shining with pride. "That was incredibly hot," he murmured, lifting me off my feet and spinning me around, uncaring of the watching court. "Remind me never to make you angry, little wolf. You are ruthless." I laughed, wrapping my arms around his neck, feeling the adrenaline of the confrontation slowly ebbing away. "I learned from the best," I teased, leaning in to kiss him. But as his lips met mine, the world suddenly tilted. The stone floor seemed to rush up toward me, and a wave of intense, spinning dizziness crashed over me, turning the edges of my vision gray. "Sienna?" Draven's voice sounded far away, sharp with panic. His grip tightened, keeping me upright as my knees buckled. "Sienna, what is it? What's wrong?" I blinked, trying to clear the sudden fog in my head. A wave of nausea rolled through my stomach, violent and unexpected. "I feel dizzy, and I think I need to sit down." Draven was already moving, shouting for the healer, his face pale with terror. But even as darkness crept into the corners of my eyes, a strange, fluttering warmth bloomed in my womb. Not the pain of the scar, but something new, something impossibly, undeniably alive. Chapter 17. Epilogue. The Miracle. If Draven paced any harder, he was going to wear a permanent trench into the stone floor of our bedroom, effectively ruining the structural integrity of the citadel. It had been 3 months since the night of the assassination attempt. 3 months since I had marked him and saved his life. And 3 months since I had taken my place as the Lycan Queen. In that time, I had learned a great many things. How to run a kingdom, how to negotiate trade routes, and exactly how annoyingly overprotective a Lycan King could be when he thought his mate was even slightly unwell. Currently, he was vibrating with enough nervous energy to power a small city, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides as he glared at the poor ancient healer, Elder Bram, who was calmly checking my pulse. "She is pale," Draven accused, stopping his pacing to loom over the bed like a storm cloud. "Why is she pale, Bram? And she was dizzy yesterday, during the council meeting." "I saw her sway. If she is sick, tell me, so I can destroy whatever virus has dared to invade her system." "I am not sick, you dramatic beast," I sighed, though I couldn't help but smile at him. I reached out and snagged his hand, pulling him closer until his hip bumped against the mattress. He immediately entangled our fingers, his grip tight and possessive, grounding me in the way only he could. "I probably just ate something that disagreed with me. You know the kitchen staff has been trying to fatten me up since the wedding." "It is not the food," Draven growled, his eyes narrowing as he scanned me for invisible threats. "You have been sleeping more. Your scent has changed. It is sweeter, creamier. It is driving my wolf insane because he thinks you are hiding something from him." He leaned down, his nose brushing against my hair, inhaling deeply. "And you are moody. Yesterday you cried because I killed a spider." "It was a very small spider," I defended, feeling my cheeks heat up. "And it had a family." I was emotional. Elder Bram finally released my wrist, packing his instruments back into his leather satchel with maddening slowness. And he looked from me to Draven, his milky eyes twinkling with a secret that made my stomach do a nervous flip. "The Queen is not sick, Majesty," the old wolf croaked. "In fact, she is the picture of health. Her vitals are strong, her energy is balanced, and the bond has settled beautifully." "Then why the dizziness?" Draven demanded, not satisfied. "Why the fatigue?" Bram chuckled, a dry rasping sound. "Because growing a second skeleton is exhausting work, even for a queen." The room went dead silent. The fire crackled in the hearth, sounding like gunshots in the quiet. I froze, my hand flying to my stomach, my heart skipping a beat. I looked at Bram, breathless, waiting for the punchline of a cruel joke. "What did you say?" "A second skeleton," Bram repeated, snapping his bag shut. "Or perhaps two. It is hard to tell this early. But the heartbeat is strong. You are pregnant, Sienna." Draven made a noise that sounded like a strangled cat. He stared at Bram, his face draining of all color, leaving him looking more terrified than he had when he was dying of poison. "Impossible," he whispered, shaking his head. She cannot. The injury. The scar tissue. We were told she was barren. I accepted it. I don't care about heirs, Bram. Don't give her false hope." "I do not give false hope," Bram snapped. "The injury was there. But the night she marked you, Majesty, the energy transfer was immense. The golden bond doesn't just heal the recipient. It balances the giver. It burned away the poison in your blood, and it burned away the scar tissue in her womb. It healed her, just as she healed you." Draven turned his gaze to me. His eyes were wide, glassy, and utterly bewildered. He looked at my stomach, then at my face, then back at my stomach, as if he expected it to suddenly start glowing. "A pup," he choked out. We—" "A pup," I confirmed, tears pricking my eyes as the reality washed over me. The heat I had felt that night, the knitting sensation, it hadn't been my imagination. It had been a miracle. "I didn't kill the king," I whispered, a laugh bubbling up in my throat. "I made him a dad." Draven opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. His eyes rolled back in his head, and for the first time in recorded history, the apex predator, the slayer of armies, the terrifying Lycan King, fainted dead away. He hit the floor with a thud that shook the bed frame. "Well," Bram said, stepping over the unconscious monarch to head for the door, "I will leave you to revive him. Try smelling salts, or perhaps just whisper 'diaper change' in his ear. That usually wakes them up." When Draven finally came to minutes later, he didn't speak. He simply crawled onto the bed, pulled me into his lap, and buried his face in my neck, sobbing quietly. He held me like I was made of glass, his large hand resting reverently over the tiny, impossible life growing inside me. "I love you," he murmured against my skin, his voice thick with emotion. "I love you, Sienna. Thank you. Thank you." "I love you too," I whispered back, threading my fingers through his hair. I had come to this citadel with a dagger strapped to my leg and a heart full of ice, intending to end a monster. Instead, I had found a partner, a protector, and a love that had defied death itself. The assassin was gone. The queen had risen. And the best part of our story was just beginning. And just like that, the assassin laid down her dagger, and the lonely king finally found his home. I hope your heart is as full as mine is right now. If Draven and Sienna's journey from enemies to fated mates made you swoon, or maybe even tear up a little, please give this video a huge thumbs up. It helps our pack grow stronger every day. And if you haven't already, make sure you are subscribed to Storm's Werewolf Romance Library and have that notification bell turned on so you never miss a happily ever after. I am dying to know, what was your absolute favorite moment? Was it the cheese knife incident, or the moment she finally claimed him to save his life? Let me know in the comments. And while you're there, I've had a majority of the pack members say you'd love the pack to be named Storm Chasers. Do you think we should go by that name? Or you have something different in mind? And also, tell me where you're listening from today. Whether you're tuning in from, I love seeing our pack connect from all over the world. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until the next full moon, stay wild and love fiercely.